Let's continue tracing the argument of 1 Timothy. We come next to the passage that deals with the requirements for deacons. What is required of a person for them to serve as a deacon in the church? In other words, we are tracing the argument of 1 Timothy chapter 3, verses 8 to 13. The basic structure of the passage is that it begins with an assertion. Actually, it's a series of assertions that Paul makes. So he says deacons, that's a topic. Everything else is a comment about deacons. And particularly there's an assertion. They must be certain things. It's not one thing, it's a series of things. Now, why does he make that assertion? Well, the answer is given right at the end in this word for, which introduces the ground for his assertion. A ground is basically the reason for an idea. It's the reason that you express and defend a particular idea. So Paul says deacons must be certain things. He makes assertions about what they need to be for those who serve well, gain a good standing, and he grounds that set of beliefs about what they must be in the final reason that is given at the end. Let's unpack each part. So as I said, we are looking at not a single assertion, but actually a series of assertions. And I think there are 5 assertions that are made about what deacons need to be. Let's unpack each one of them. Firstly, he says deacons must be dignified. So this is a fact. His first claim, deacons must be dignified. I could also have labeled this as generic specific. In other words, the general requirement is they must be dignified. And then he unpacks what does that look like. Or we can say they must be dignified, and then he gives an interpretation. What does dignified mean? Well, it means not double-tongued, not addicted to much wine. Drinking much wine makes you do undignified things. And not greedy for dishonest gain. So 3 requirements for being dignified. Second, he says they must hold to the mystery of the faith. They must hold to the mystery of the faith. This is an action. There must be people who hold firmly to the essence of the gospel, to the core fundamental beliefs of our faith, and they must do it in a particular manner. They must do it with a clear conscience. In other words, they must sincerely believe those things, not going through the motions, not paying lip service, not kind of sort of believing, but mixing it with other beliefs. They need to be people firmly convinced of the fundamentals of the faith. Intriguing that this is a requirement for deacons. There's no space for people serving as deacons in the church who are sort of committed, sort of believers. These must be people who truly believe the core tenets of our faith. Thirdly, he says they need to be tested. Actually, we have a step-goal relationship here. We've got 2 imperatives, let them be, let them serve, and you see the word first and then the word then. These provide a set of events that must happen in a particular order. First, they must be tested, and then let them serve as deacons. So there's a step, testing, and the goal of that step is to let them serve as deacons. But there's a condition built into this. Only let them serve as deacons if they prove themselves blameless. That's the same word used to describe elders earlier in the passage. Now, you might think it's strange that there's this condition for deacons to be tested, but there isn't a corresponding condition for elders or overseers that says, let them be tested, and if they prove themselves blameless, let them serve. The way I understand this is that everything that is required of deacons, the lesser group, would also be required by inference of overseers, the more responsible group. So whatever set of deacons here applies equally to elders above. Fourthly, he says, their wives. Now this is controversial. The word for wife here is the Greek word gynekos, and their wives must be dignified. Now remember, this was the same requirement that was made as the opening statement. Why is this controversial? Because gine can mean woman or it can mean wife. And there is a debate as to whether Paul is now talking about lady deacons, female deacons, or whether he's talking about women who are the wives of deacons. And the literature's divided. I tend to lean towards this being a reference to, not to wives, but to female deacons. But you can take your pick. Anyhow, be that as it may, these women, whether they are the wives of deacons or whether they are female deacons, are to be certain things. They're to be dignified. Well, what does that look like? What's the interpretation of dignified? Firstly, not slanderers. Secondly, sober-minded. Very similar to what we saw above, right? And thirdly, faithful in all things. Fifthly, his fifth assertion about what kind of people deacons must be is let deacons each be the husband of one wife. Now, this is the same statement made about elders above, and I think that the Greek phrase mias gynekos aner means a faithful husband. So he must be both a faithful husband and a good father, managing their own children and households well, a good household leader. This was expected in the ancient world of men who had responsibility. This, faithful husbands, not so much. Powerful men, people of influence, particularly men, were often allowed to do things that were not permitted for their wives. Maybe the lists of ideals didn't stipulate that, but in practice it was kind of accepted. Now, all of that is grounded in this final statement here, right at the end, which says, why must a deacon be all of these things? Well, he must be all of these things because those who serve well gain a good standing and great confidence. So there's real honor that goes with being a deacon if you serve well, and therefore it's important for the people that are chosen for this honorable role to be well positioned to carry that office with honor and dignity that brings credit to the gospel. So essentially, that's the structure for the passage about appointing deacons. 5 assertions about the characteristics that deacons must embody, and that's grounded in the great honor and good standing that the office of the deacon potentially provides.